Welcome to Inverkenny Junction. Today we're going to look at the Dapol Class 08 and 9. I'll show you how you can save money when buying a Class 08 and fit your own DCC sound to save even more money. We'll look at the differences between the 08 and the 09 and compare the standard Dapol sound with the SWD sound. So I bought this 08 over a year ago with full DCC sound. I'm almost embarrassed to say what I paid for it, but it was definitely a lot more than what they're being sold for now. Rails are currently doing them for $361. If you buy one with no DCC, they're $206. And they've got some other liveries that are a bit cheaper at $199. I've been looking to buy another 08 for a while, so I've been keeping an eye on the prices. I want BR Blue, so either I have to buy the one I bought before with the same number, or buy the unnumbered version. Either way, I'd have to renumber it when I bought it. A couple of months ago, I noticed they were selling 09s a bit cheaper. These were 189, but a few weeks ago they dropped them to 165. So I ordered one up. I think I must have got the last one because the BR Blue one has gone from their website now. They still have a couple of models for 165 and a nice weathered version for 199. 165 is a real bargain for an O gauge loco. You can pay nearly $300 for a Dapol O Gauge 08 with sound. So O gauge certainly doesn't have to be expensive when there's bargains like this around. So why did I buy an 09? In Era 7 they was all southern region based. If I bought an 08 and I had to renumber that, I thought I could buy an 09 and just renumber that an 08. Looking at the specs, the only difference is the gearing, so there can't be any external differences, or are there? So the 09s are all sold under the Gaugemaster brand. They basically seem to take a standard Dapol or Helgen loco and add a load more detail. The retail price is the same, so this makes them more value for money. A quick look at this 09 shows it comes in a really nice box, and there's a lot more detail than the standard 08. So this, together with the lower price I paid, makes it seem even more of a bargain. So in the box you get a set of air brake pipes and the fitting instructions. There's also a set of wiper blades in there and some general instructions. 26 Class 09s were originally built from 1959 to 1962. These were classified 090 under tops. They're basically the same as the more numerous 08, just with higher gearing. The 08s only had a top speed of 15 or 20 miles an hour, so are only really suitable for shunting. The 09 with its slightly higher gearing could do 27.5 miles an hour. So this many could also be used for short distance freight trips on branch lines. They were originally allocated to the southern region, but from 97 they began to work further afield. Between 1992 and 93, a further 12 locomotives were converted to 09s from 08s. 7 of these were classified 091 under tops and a further 5 092. The original 090s were vacuum brake only, but were later modified for air brakes. The 091s and 2s were either dual or air brake only. The difference between the 091 and 2 was the electrical system, with the 091s operating at 110 volts and the 092s 90 volts. So the brakes are the only visual external difference between the subclasses. So if you're pre-92, you want to model an 090 with vacuum or air brakes. If you're post-92, you can model 091 and 092 subclasses with air brakes. And the other thing to note here is, as far as I can make out, there's no visual difference between an 09 and an 08. So if you want to buy an 09 and renumber it an 08, you can, which was obviously my plan. So let's compare the Dapol 08 and 09 to see what the actual difference is. On the side here you'll see the coupling cranks are painted yellow on the 09. There's also some extra handrail highlighting. There's also an additional box on the right hand side. I'm not sure if this is a toolbox or an equipment box. It could be something to do with the air brakes. But I've seen 08s and 09s with and without this box, so it's not something that's peculiar to the 09. On the other side, this box is on the 08 and the 09. Moving round to the front, the buffer beam is highlighted in yellow, and there's also some extra lighting on the 09. Looking at the rear, again the buffer beam is highlighted in yellow, and there's more extra lighting. There's also extra detailing on the brake pipes. As I said before, the 09 just has more detailing in general than the 08, and overall just looks a better model. So let's look at fitting a decoder to the 08 and the 09. You can access the decoder by removing the top section, so there's no need to remove the body. So if you get your fingernail just under this rear section, while squeezing the body just under the handrails, just pull up gently and it should pop off. Just be careful not to squeeze the handrails because they're only plastic and they do break very easily. Once the top's off, you can see the decoder and the decoder blanking board. We're going to be fitting a Locksound 5 decoder, which is part number 58419. It comes with a really small speaker, but we'll just discard that. You can also fit the optional Stay Alive, which I would recommend on the 08 and the 09. Stay Alive is issue part number 54672. For a speaker, we're going to be fitting the ESU 50343. This is a passive radiator design, and for its size it has by far the best bass response. I'm going to fit the speaker in the lid above the decoder. The normal place to fit a speaker in an 08 is in the nose, but there's not enough room for this speaker in there. You'll see in the lid there's this speaker mounting boss, and we really do need to remove that. But I don't like making permanent changes to locos unless you really have to, so we're going to cheat. The lid actually fits on either way round, so if we turn it around we don't need to remove the boss. There is a slight difference to the lid from the front to the back, but you'd have to be pretty eagle-eyed to spot that. If it really bothers you, well, you can just remove the boss. In order to make this speaker fit, we need to remove the mounting lugs at either end. You can simply hacksaw these off in a vise. Careful not to cut too close to the speaker enclosure. In order for these speakers to work, they need to be airtight. The smaller speaker is the driver, the larger one is the passive radiator. This is basically just a rubber speaker cone. As the driver goes in and out, the air pressure changes in the enclosure, which is what drives the passive radiator movement. If the enclosure is not airtight, it won't work. I've had a few of these foul straight out of the box, so it's always worth checking. If you give the cone a little squeeze, you can see the passive radiator moving up and down. These two speakers are obviously working out of phase, so they should in theory cancel each other out. But at certain frequencies, the phasing of the air pressure actually adds rather than subtracts. Careful design, you can get this point to coincide with where the bass response rolls off of the speaker. So this actually boosts the bass response just as it starts to roll off. This is what gives these speakers an unusually high bass response for their size, this one going down to 150 Hz. So as I said before, the correct way round for the lid is with the speaker boss at the front. But we're going to turn it around so the speaker boss is at the back. The idea is to stick the speaker to the lid with double-sided tape, and it'll be slightly offset. It also needs to be offset slightly out from the speaker boss in order to clear the decoder. Before we fix the speaker in place, we need to plug in the speaker cable assembly. This is keyed, so it'll only go in one way round. The polarity of a speaker doesn't make any difference, but it's good practice to connect it the right way, because if you do add a second speaker at a later date, it's important to get them phasing correctly. You then need to add 3M double-sided tape to the back of the speaker. I normally add 2 strips. One strip of tape down the centre would stick the speaker okay, but you could get vibration at the sides of the speaker where it touches the lid. So it's important to cover the whole of the base of the speaker. This 3M tape is made of foam, probably about 1 millimetre thick. The adhesive is really strong and it rarely comes off. But the best thing is it absorbs any vibration between the speaker and the lid to stop any rattles. There's a bit of a restriction in the nose of the O8, so you need to offset the speaker slightly. Adding plenty of tape so there's a little bit protruding from the side of the speaker allows the speaker wires to be stuck down to it, which again stops any rattles. When you stick the speaker to the foam, don't push it down too hard, then offer it up to the O8 to make sure it all fits correctly. If you don't push it down too hard, you can still reposition it a little bit. So when you get the position where you want it, just push it down nice and hard, and then that adhesive with time will go off. So the next job is to solder the power pack or stay alive to the decoder board. Obviously, if you're not fitting a stay alive, you can skip this step. There's 3 connections, positive and negative, and a white charge wire. It's quite a fiddly job if you're not used to soldering, but your ESU retailer should really solder this on for you if you order them both at the same time. We certainly would if you ordered a decoder and stay alive from us. So the next job is to remove the original speaker and then resolder the wires from the new speaker. The decoder mounting PCB on top of the motor has actually 2 pads for a speaker connection. If you were mounting the speaker in the nose, you'd normally connect the speaker connections there. But since we've mounted the speaker to the roof, it's easier to solder the wires direct to the decoder. And this means you can remove the roof with the speaker and the decoder all as one unit. So next we remove the decoder blanking board. You can just ease that out with a pair of long nose pliers. Then fit the decoder. You'll see one of the pins is missing. There's 21 I think in total, so it can only go in one way. Once that's in, we can fit the stay alive. There's plenty of room for that in the nose, so again just fix it down with double-sided tape. And then just fit the roof and we're all done. So the next step is to program the decoder with the ESU programmer. I won't go into the programming here, as really that's a subject for another video. And if you're buying a pre-programmed decoder, you wouldn't need to do this stage anyway. Anyway, to cut a long story short, we programmed it and it didn't work. After quite a bit of time fault finding, we traced the fault to a short on the PCB. There's pickups on the front wheels and the rear wheels, so there's 2 sets of wires going to the PCB. And you can see here one of them had a dead short across it. Once we found that, it was easy enough to remove. But before that, we'd already removed the decoder and was testing the thing on DC. If you have any problems like this when you're installing a decoder, it's always worth checking the Loco actually runs on DC. In this case it didn't, so we knew something was up. So here we're just retesting the Loco on DC with a power supply. So once we've got it working on DC, it's time to reinstall the decoder and try it again. This time it works straight away. So let's see what the 09 sounds like on the track. And this is the 08 with the factory sound. So I think you'll agree the standard factory sound in the O8 is weak and virtually has no bass at all. But it's not really fair to compare it with the O9 since that's got a better speaker, so why not fit the same speaker in the O8? To be honest, I've not really looked at the speaker in the O8 before, but I've pulled it out and, well, now I can see why it doesn't have any bass. It actually looks like some kind of tweeter. Anyway, I won't dwell on why they decided to put that speaker in the O8. They obviously had their reasons. So I'll just fit the ESU speaker as we did before in the O9, fixing it to the roof. And reversing the roof again as we did before. Right, so let's see what it sounds like. Well, that's an amazing improvement. I can't believe I've put up with the poor factory sound in that O8 for over a year, and it was so easy to improve. It really only took me about 10 minutes to swap the speaker, and that speaker retails for around about £20. So that's a real cheap way to improve the factory sound. So let's talk about costs again. Current price at Rails for the DCC sound version is $361.50. The DCC ready version is $206.50. So they're charging $155 for a sound fitting. So what was the cost of fitting sound to the O9? The decoder and the speaker retail for $107. So if you add this onto the cost of the O8, you get $313.50 instead of $361.50, and you're getting a better speaker. But as we only paid $165 for the O9, the total works out at $272 sound fitted. That's a £90 saving on the factory sound version. But we did have to stay alive, which is an extra 50 quid, but even with that, you're still saving 40. And you're getting a much better spec with the better speaker and the stay alive. So that really brings us on to the stay alive, or the power pack as ESU call it. The O8 is one of them locos that actually really benefits from a stay alive. When you think about it, it's only got half the pickups of a larger twin bogie loco. So it's much more sensitive to dirt on the track or dead spots. So here's a demo of the two locos. Obviously the O9 has to stay alive and the O8 doesn't. You get much worse problems at lower speeds. Just watch how long the O9 continues to run when I lift it off the track. So the lights are different between the O8 and the O9. The O8 has two lights on each end, which can either be white or red and white for shunting. The O9, on the other hand, just has shunting lights with that top headlight, which is directional. At first I thought the centre light at the bottom there would be the red, but there's not even a wire going to it. It might have an LED in there, I'm not sure. To investigate, you'd have to remove the body, which is quite a job. The lights on the O9 will do. If you've got shunting lights, and for freight work, you can turn them off and just have the single headlight, because you don't need a rear light then anyway. So the only real lighting function it doesn't have is parking lights. But the O8 doesn't have parking lights either. The decoder's programmed to either have front lights or rear lights, which are directional. So although it has the capability of showing reds both ends, the decoder's not programmed to do that. So if you fitted another decoder and programmed it correctly, it could have the parking light function. The Class 08 was built between 1952 and 1962. In total, 996 were produced at Crewe, Darlington, Derby, Doncaster and Horwich Works. They were a development of the LMS 12033 series, which was later numbered to Class 11 under tops, and have an English Electric 6KT engine rated at 400 horsepower. Designed just for shunting, they have a top speed of 15 miles per hour. Over the years, as things changed on the network, there's less need for shunting, so numbers have now declined, but there's still over 150 in use today. This means that not only was the O8 the most numerous locomotive ever produced, but the one with the longest lifespan. As with the O9, brakes were originally vacuum, and then later vacuum and air, and eventually just air only. Other than brakes, there's not really any variations that the modeller needs to worry about, with subclasses either operating at different voltages or with different couplings. There's only two variations of note. The 089s had a cut-down roof and lowered bodywork, and 608s were converted to Class 13s for use at Tinsley. These are basically just two 08s permanently coupled together with the cab removed on the slave unit. So the way the 08 hunts at tickover, I'm not sure that's correct. I've listened to a few start-up videos and they certainly hunt when they start up from cold, but once they're warm, the tickover's very even. The 09 just ticks over evenly. So I wonder which one is correct. I think the Dapol factory sound is what it sounds like when it's cold, and the SWD sound is when the engine's warm. But it'd be interesting to know what other people think, so let me know in comments if you know any different.
Draw forward on 8 road.
Ready, okay to proceed.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe.